This is Swiss and Chips, your British guide to Switzerland. Hello, this is Swiss and Chips and I'm Jo Fay. And today I'm going to take you on a walk with me through a neighbourhood in Bern. We're going to be starting off in Kirchenfeld and we're going to walk into the town centre. So it's September that I'm recording this. It's a Monday afternoon, so it's quite quiet here in Bern. And this morning I was listening to another travel podcast based in Vietnam, and it really struck me how loud it is there. All the honking and motorbikes and cars driving around. And I thought it might be interesting to take you on a walk with me in Bern, just because it sounds so different here. If you've already moved to Switzerland and you've been to Bern, you'll probably already know it's a very quiet place, especially for a capital. But if you haven't been to Switzerland yet, or you just haven't been to Bern, this could be quite interesting for you. So I'm starting off in Kirchenfeld, which is a really nice neighbourhood with some very nice houses. And one of the interesting things to see here is the Tierpark. That's the animal park. And if you're a runner like me, it's a good place to get to know because it runs alongside the river. So you can run past and see some animals while you're out on your run. And of course, if you want to come here and spend a bit more time there, you can also pay to go in and see the whole range of animals they have there. It kind of spreads over a big outdoor space, basically. But they have a few small animals that you can just see by walking past for free, which is pretty awesome. If you're someone who's moved to Bern, as an English speaker, perhaps that might be why you're listening to this podcast. Another interesting thing that you'll find in Kirchenfeld is the English church. Obviously, it's a church, but it also has events for English speakers, like regular book sales, for example. They had one just this Saturday, so that's quite a good thing to check out if you're looking for some cheap English books to read. So Kirchenfeld is a biggish area in Bern. There's a lot of embassies that are based here and ambassadors' residencies as well. So the buildings are quite nice, as you can imagine. There's a couple of main tram lines that run through, and there are buses that go more into the neighbourhood. Something that can be quite nice if you want to explore it a little bit more at your own pace is to borrow one of the bikes that are part of the bike rental scheme that was set up here recently. You just have to download the app and then you can activate a bike at loads of different bike stations all around the city and then just head off wherever you like. It's not too expensive and it's extremely convenient, has to be said. So I've walked up from the Tierpark and I'm now crossing over the main street that's in Kirchenfeld. It's called the Kirchenfeldstraße, conveniently enough. And when you're on this side of town, you're basically on the other side of the river to the main part of Bern. So at some point you're going to be crossing over a bridge, basically. And the one we're heading for is the Kirchenfeldbrücke. You can see there's a theme to this walk. So coming from the Kirchenfeld area, heading into town, you're going to go past two of the town's biggest museums as well. There's the Bern Historical Museum, which has the Einstein Museum inside, and then there's the Natural History Museum as well. And you can see the Natural History Museum from quite far away because it has a big golden elephant on its roof. So if you're up high somewhere in Bern, have a look out for that. Something that I find quite useful, but someone always makes fun of when we see them around town. There's a lot of kind of green pillars as you're walking around. And they're sort of giving you directions to the various sites. Like I'm standing by one right now, for example, which is saying the animal park is behind me. There's also the Museum for Communication and the Swiss Alpine Museum that we're nearby right now. So you can't get lost for very long in Bern. It's not so huge and there's quite a few ways to find your bearings. And if you're coming to visit Bern on a weekend, you'll probably get quite a different impression than you would in the week. I mean, you can hear a few cars going past now as I'm walking along. But it is very quiet on a weekday afternoon. Not so much in the town centre, but in the neighbourhoods surrounding it. And the further out you go, the fewer and fewer people you'll see. So I'm just passing by the Natural History Museum. They have a ton of interesting stuff inside, including a kind of detailed exhibit about Barry. Barry is the famous mountain rescue dog. He's the image you'll see if you see a picture somewhere of a mountain rescue dog, basically. And there's quite a fun kind of interactive exhibit there for kids or young at heart adults. And they have lots of information about the animals that live in Switzerland or did in previous times. And we're approaching Helvetiaplatz now, which is the area where lots of the main museums in Bern are. And when you're coming up to this area, you'll see a kind of big fountain in the middle. And then the various museums are dotted around the outside, so it's quite handy if you want to visit a few. The Alpine Museum, which is a bit smaller but interesting. It's all about the history of the mountains, basically. Famous climbs and things like that. You also have an art museum here. But I think the kind of big attraction to this square, I guess you can call it, is the Historical Museum of Bern. And that looks really impressive from far away. If you're coming to Bern and, for example, standing by the Parliament here, your eye will definitely catch this building. It looks like a castle, but it's a museum. So it's a very cool building and very interesting stuff inside as well, including that section specifically on Einstein. Helvetiaplatz is quite an interesting place because if there's going to be a demonstration in Bern, they'll either be on the Bundesplatz, the square outside the Parliament building, or they'll be here at Helvetiaplatz. It's a kind of congregation point for demonstrations. I think often they're meeting here and then walking over the bridge into town, for example, or the other way around. And if you're coming to Bern in the summer, there's a couple of outdoor bars that open up out here, which is really nice. The one outside the Kunsthalle, the art museum here that's just by the bridge, I opened a couple of years ago, and it's like a platform bar basically. It overhangs the river slightly, and it has trees inside it. It's really built around them. It's a very cool place to come for a drink. It's about a 10 to 15 minute walk from the Tierpark up to Helvetiaplatz, depending on how fast you're going and what you stop to see along the way. So now I'm on the Kirchenfeld bridge. I like this bridge a lot because you can see many of Bern's sights from this bridge. And I think if you come to Bern for a day trip and you're not planning on going to the museums that are there on Helvetiaplatz, there's a chance that you might miss this it's sort of a viewing point in a way, but it's not so high up. So from the middle of the bridge you can see Bern's Parliament building. And if you turn around and face the other way, you can see the Münster Cathedral. You can also see the Rose Garden just about in the distance. You've got the River Aare running underneath. That's the tram going by now. And you can also see a little bit of the Matter Quarter, which runs alongside the Aare River. It's a very nice place to take a walk along. Very unusual, lots of little shops kind of tucked away. And it's a little bit cut off from the town because it's so much lower down than the main part. Standing on the bridge looking at the Parliament building, just to the right of it is the Hotel Bellevue, which is a very, very upmarket hotel here in Bern. There's often luxury cars parked outside. This is a place that people with a lot of money to spare will come and stay in Bern, or someone celebrating a special event, for example. But of course you can go in for a drink, for example, on their terrace that they have, if you feel like celebrating a special moment. It's a nice place to go. It also has a lot of history. They used to have kind of dances here after the war, when the American soldiers were waiting to go back. They had dances here if local people came as well. So some pretty interesting times there back then. It's got a lot of history, that place. So as you're reaching the other end of the Kirchenfeld bridge and you turn around, you'll see there's a big kind of green hill behind you. That's the Gurten. That's Bern's kind of mini mountain. And if you're coming to Bern, you should definitely go up there There's a really nice funicular that takes you up to the top. Or if you're feeling a bit more energetic, you can walk up there, of course, as well. You have great views from up there. There's a restaurant. It's just a nice place to spend some time outdoors, get some fresh air, see the city from a different angle. So I've crossed over the river now, and I'm in Bern. There's the casino building on my right. And I'm about to cross over this intersection here and head towards the Zytglogge, which is possibly the number one attraction in Bern, judging by the crowds of people who come and stare at it every day. So if you're here on a Saturday and you're walking in the direction with the bridge behind you heading towards the Zytglogge, you'll find a really charming street market here on Saturday mornings and early Saturday afternoon. Has all kinds of lovely stalls selling cheese, fresh produce, bread, flowers, meats, that kind of thing. So that's really nice to wander around, and you can take in some of Bern's historical buildings at the same time. Okay, I'm approaching the Zytglogge now, and there's already a huge crowd of people there. If you're going to come and see this, it's a good idea to read about it a little bit beforehand, because you really get a much better understanding of what you're looking at. I think we need a whole podcast episode to talk about it in detail. But there are basically different aspects of the clock that move. There are different kind of models and statues that rotate around depending on the hour. There's a cockerel that comes out. There are different statues and figurines that move around depending on the hour. There's a clock that tells the time, and there's another clock face that has kind of astrological importance. You can also go on tours inside the clock to see the inner workings too and find out lots and lots of information about it. But also just passing by and catching it chiming on the hour is very nice too. So something that's happening now, which I always find quite amusing, is the crowds that gather on the street here really take up the entire road. And if you heard that kind of beeping noise, there's a bus route that has to run through here on cobbled streets, and it's always battling to make its way through the crowds of people. It's quite interesting to see how this little city is dealing with the increased number of tourists that are coming. I mean, I think we're a long way off places like Barcelona and Venice, but even in the few years I've lived here, I've seen a growing number of tourists coming here. So 12 o'clock is obviously a really good time to come and see this clock. Just make sure you're on the right side of the tower, because it's a tower that's in between a lot of buildings, and it has a small tunnel that runs underneath it. And on one side, looks nice, but you won't see so much. On the other side, where there's generally a big crowd of people, is where you can see all the figurines that move around and the kind of moving components of the clock. So I've walked through the tunnel that came underneath it, and now I'm attempting to cross the road here. There's a junction here where you can either go to your right over another bridge that passes over the river into a different part of town, or you can go straight on and head in the direction of the train station. I'm just going to have to run to get out of the way of a tram. So lots of trams, buses, bikes, Vespers, taxis passing through here. So if you're standing taking a photo, then look out behind you, that's what I say. Okay. I'm walking through this part of town. It's cobbled streets. There are covered walkways with lots of different shops underneath. The closer you get to the train station, the more kind of mainstream chains there are. If you head in the opposite direction and walk downhill, then you get lots of small independent shops as well, both of which are interesting. The other thing to look out for when you're walking around town is the various different water fountains. They all have something interesting on top of them. You can drink from them as well, for free. And if you look carefully, you'll see small information signs attached to the side of buildings or on walls that give you information about the place where you're standing in German, French and English. For example, the one I'm standing in front of now is all about the fountain that's behind me, the Schützenbrunnen. So there's loads of history to be found if you've got your eyes open. Okay, well, I'm going to leave my walk there. Hope you enjoyed coming along with me and got to hear a little bit of what Bern sounds like on a normal day. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.